Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Stacy Casson here, also known as the Clarity Concierge. For those of you who can't see me, I'm a very tan woman with wavy salt and pepper hair. I have a white flower in my hair. I'm wearing clear glasses and a purple batik with, I guess, deep mustard, a purple and mustard batik top. And we're going to go ahead and get started with day 17 of Ask Me Almost Anything. And I like to get us started by breathing. So we'll go ahead and take a deep breath in and exhale. Deep breath in and exhale. Deep breath in and exhale. And I'm really excited because I got, well, they're coming soon, but the Blueberry Blanket made a tarot card deck with actual Pokemon. And I still am going to use my cards because there's so many different choices. But I thought for today, we'd start with, I've only printed 4 so far, but the real deck is coming. But we'd start with a card of the day. And I mean, if you were in the chat, you could pick a number between 4 because that's all I have right now because my printer didn't work properly. But if not, I'm just gonna put these around and we'll pick one to start out our day. And let's see. Ah, you get the Fool. Okay, so the Fool is an Eevee. An Eevee looks like a little cross between a dog and a fox with kind of rabbit ears. The Eevee is carrying a pole with all their belongings on a little stick, bounding into the future. And on the Eevee are all these different types of energy cards because apparently the Eevee can evolve into almost anything. And the author of this particular deck wrote, "The Fool means new beginnings and endless possibilities, and what Pokemon has more possibilities than an Eevee? A little adventurous one. Good luck out there, little guys." So tomorrow is the start of a new adventure, right? But today it's a new adventure right now. My adventure is going to be some coffee. All right. Okay. So please go ahead and put your questions in the comments, and I'm just going to check if there's any questions on LinkedIn, and I don't see anything there. If you have any questions, I'm going to drink some more. Please feel free to put them in the comments. Okay. I had one yesterday that I explored, and I'd like to explore it in more depth today until I get a question. And this was the one about consensus building. And there was the company Mural. They had 5 kind of techniques for building consensus. So I thought it would be fun to kind of see how to do this with Pokemon cards. So the first thing is to understand the stakeholders. And if you're doing this at home, you can use the cards to kind of give you some insight or what you notice about them from the Pokemon. So one of the potential stakeholders you have is Dialga. Dialga is it kind of looks like a Voltron lion, and it's very armored. It's blue and silver. It's a steel type Pokemon, uh, and again, it looks like a armored lion Voltron kind of mecha thing. It is a steel type. It has the power to control time. It appears in Sinnoh region myths as an ancient deity. So this to me would be maybe a figure because your bosses kind of set the timeline, the time frame for things. And this This Pokemon is actually quite intimidating, being a steel type Pokemon. So think about, what would what would this stakeholder person need, right? What are the different energies involved with that particular stakeholder? I'm just checking if I got another comment. No. So that's one potential type of stakeholder, right? What what would the the leader or the timekeeper, the gatekeeper need at this deal? So I'm thinking they're not super flexible. So how can you build consensus with somebody that is like that? What are some of the things you can do to help this person understand the situation? And sometimes it is briefing them on the full situation. I know usually deities don't really care because they're right, but this might be where the court jester type person. This is the court jester was the only person that could criticize the king and live, and they always live. So this is not necessarily about criticism, but it's about doing your best to understand their time frame and timeline and perhaps give them options. But let's see if we can get them to agree on the problem. So this is just one potential stakeholder. And here we have the energy switch Pokemon. This looks like a handle with a computer in the middle, and it has two little suction cups, and it looks like you're moving one Pokemon ball to another section, kind of like teleportation. So when I'm thinking on agree on the problem, maybe it's helping them to align. Okay, here's our resources. What can we switch around? What can we move around? But ultimately, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? I'm going to drink some more. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And how can we best align to, if it's aligning with their vision, and making sure that they have a full understanding of the vision and what's needed. So perhaps they would help you to reallocate some resources. Like, okay, if the timeline is not flexible, then we have any wiggle room to help us with this situation. Getting messages here. Give me 1 second for this. Still coming to the live. Okay. Yeah, it's hard with StreamYard. I don't know why LinkedIn comments don't show up. So I'm just, trying to manually keep that in play. Okay. So we're trying to build consensus, and it's agreeing on the problem. And sometimes maybe the powers that be, the higher ups, they think it's one issue, but when you give them the full situation, help them to understand the scope. And again, even if you have limited resources, they have the power to help you reallocate resources. So that's a good way to try and build consensus. And you would follow the same thing with your other stakeholders. And then what are the assumptions that people are bringing into the situation? And this one we have Torracat. This is a fire Pokemon card. Torracat is bounding across the plain, looking very confident. Although there's some clouds, there be clouds behind it. It's an orange cat with black stripes. It has fire claws. So I think some of the assumptions might be that we can do this. I don't know anybody that's worked like with coding or things like that. They always think that the coders can pull off miracles, and it's like, no, we actually need time to do things. So that could be one thing. I'm trying to read with the little small print. At its throat, it bears a ball of fire. The bell rings brightly whenever this Pokemon spits fire. Okay, so you could also be having these assumptions that your company is in stronger shape than it is, or the swagger that, oh no, we this, and you really have not delved down into the reality of the situation. So this might be a good time to go through a SWOT with your stakeholders. And we did one yesterday. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? the opportunities and the threats in this particular situation. And it is important to have all of the stakeholders in the room, because you might be missing out on part of the process if you just make assumptions. If you make a policy change and you really don't know how it impacts your frontline employees. Let's say I'll just try and keep it simple, like you own a franchise and you put in a new menu item, but you just like the menu items just appear, but perhaps you didn't understand that, okay, well, this menu item requires us to change our inventory order processing. Has anybody informed the inventory people that do the ordering for the place? This new menu item might be something that kitchen has never cooked before. Have you planned for training for the kitchen staff? If a customer has questions about it, do they know how to explain it so that they feel confident selling your menu item? And if you're not asking all of the stakeholders involved, did you do any research? Do the customers want your new product? Is it something they're interested in? And if not, that all the selling or whatever in the world may or may not help them to adopt this product. So there's a whole universe and ecosystem around decisions. Even if you were in your household, right? It's not a new marketing product, but let's say you want to buy a new soap. I've gotten immediate feedback. We don't like this new hand soap. Can we use something else? And so it's trying to understand, well, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? This hand soap splashes everywhere. We don't like it, and we're not going to adopt it. So I'm using the hand soap till it dies. That's just a simple situation, but involving the people that are impacted by your decision can make the difference between if something is going to be successful or not. Okay, so we're kind of testing those assumptions and our ideas. And then now maybe we found an opportunity or a threat that needs to be addressed. Maybe you went out and did a Gemba walk. You went to the place to see the process and you're like, oh, wow, we had considered that. We need to come up with solutions. So how do you do that? I love brainstorming sessions. And again, we get a different kind of switch. So this one, you have two balls like in a cradle, and the first one's lifting up, kind of down this Tron looking rainbow runway. So again, switch things up. With brainstorming, you can do brainwriting. You can try and how can we make this worse? There are many different ways to switch up the definitions and the perspectives of the problem. Being hands-on. It's different to talk about something for some people versus visualizing it versus having manipulatives, actual tactile things that you can touch and see. Doing a simulation sometimes can bring things into perspective. Role playing can make a difference if you're doing something that's customer facing, or in your home, if you're trying to model problem solving, having the persons take on each other's perspective. That's a way that you can brainstorm solutions and also kind of see what's happening upstream and downstream. Make sure that you are all on the same page with this. And finally, as a leader or as a parent or a friend, or a colleague, how do you build a safe space for feedback? And here we have Inky. It's a little squid. It's a little tiny squid. It is a dark energy Pokemon. So those are, for me, things that lie beneath the surface. It flashes the light-emitting spots on its body, which drains its opponent's will to fight. It takes the opportunity to scuttle away and hide. So we want to make a space that people don't want to hide. We want to make a space that people aren't trying to run away. And so for me, the dark energy Pokemons, these are about underlying the undercurrents. It's understanding the undercurrents of situations. Perhaps if you leader in a brainstorming session, people don't want to rock the boat because the boss is here. What's a way that you can make it easier, again, for people to share their feedback? It might be, look, I'm going to step out of the room and you guys just put your things on sticky notes, or I'm going to leave the meeting and I'll come back, discuss amongst yourselves. That might be a way to make it safer. Having a good moderator can also help to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. They can make sure that, hey, I didn't hear from you. Do you have any thoughts? Are you sure? Brainwriting. There's many different ways to set a group for psychological safety. But the beginning thing would be to ensure that we have correctly defined the problem and that everyone involved has the same understanding of the problem and that any issues have been assuaged. It is challenging when there are times, but I think sometimes when you don't ensure that everyone's concerns are met, you're going to end up revisiting this in the long run. I mean, you can't revisit this if the building's on fire. That is, get out. We need to get out. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Get out of the building. You need to be safe. So that was one I wanted to revisit from yesterday. And that should give you more options when you're trying to build consensus amongst your people and making sure that not missing any things. You have identified the gaps in your situation in order to have a more successful outcome. Okay. We're going forward. And what I like to do when I don't have questions in the chat is I do what's called a Tigro poll. Tigro is a coaching to help your clients kind of narrow down their area of focus. It's good for people that maybe are overwhelmed. Like, okay, let's try and narrow this down for you. What category or what topic could your situation be about? Give me 1 minute. Yeah, I drink coffee with a spoon in there. Okay, so start with the T, the topic, and we've been getting the steel energy Pokemon a lot. And steel can have different meanings. Again, this depends on you, my dear viewer out there. This is a great card with a glowing steel here. It has an inverted black triangle with brackets. And as we saw with a creature like Dialga, the steel Pokemon itself can be pretty fearsome and intimidating. Steel has some very interesting properties. It is strong yet flexible. It is really good for withstanding storms. So, I mean, just take a moment to think about what are the properties of steel that might play into your life. It's a good conductor. It is pretty high on the strength, the hardness property. It is an amalgamation of, I don't know this off the top of my head, but it's an alloy of iron and carbon, and it has some other teeny tiny elements. It is one of the world's most important engineering and construction material. It has high tensile strength, impact strength, good ductility, and it's easy to be weld. It is also magnetic, so it attracts things, and it can withstand a lot of heat. So again, thinking about those properties or just what you feel when you look at steel. Maybe you feel this is just cold or not friendly or something like that. It really is up to you, my dear viewers, to come to your own understanding of what that visual topic triggers within you or sparks within you. So with that, then okay, well, what's my goal around this? Maybe you want to develop more resiliency in your life. I mean, that's not a fun goal, but maybe you need it. Maybe you feel caged in and you want to do something different. So, what is a goal you can have? And wow, our little Evie showed up again. The Evie, like I said, it's a mix between like a fox and a bunny rabbit. It looks more like a fox with kind of bunny rabbit ears. It's on a hill. There's blue skies and flowers in an idyllic village. And Evie's strength is continuous steps. So it's trying to improve and go forward. So thanks to its unstable genetic makeup, this special Pokemon conceals many different possible evolutions. Again, yesterday I talked about it's not necessarily who do you want to be, but who do you need to be. So when you're thinking about your goals, what do you want to evolve into? What does that future look like for you? Sometimes it's just setting a vision because it's hard to move forward if you're confused about what that looks like. For example, some people say they want to get healthy. How do you define health? What does that look like for you? Is it you have a good relationship with your food? Is it more physical activity? Could it be your mental health? There's so many different aspects of that. So clearly defining your goal will help. I mean, granted, an EV card just gives you more possibilities and options. So it may be challenging to whittle that down a little bit, but I have faith in you that you can whittle it down. So while you're thinking the possibilities and options that are there for you, let's think about what can you realistically accomplish, right? The R part of T-Grow is what's realistic. What can you actually get, or what are you up against? And that's it's a it's a model, by the way, adopted by Miles Downey, and this is in the book Effective Coaching. So we have our general topic of maybe resiliency, and then set specific goals. And um, I have a question. It's live now. Okay, cool. And then, again, where are we in relation to your goals? So perhaps you want to make a change, but how ready are you to change? And this one you have Yanma. This looks kind of like a grasshopper or locust. It's a flying, it looks like a dragonfly out there, and it's a grass energy Pokemon card. So it might be, are you ready? Maybe you're not ready to change. Maybe you're ready to do some research about the change. This is a scout, so it can flap its wings really, really fast and generate change. The other thing when I think about dragonflies are things that can pivot relatively quickly. They can change direction very quickly. And with the scout one, for me, kind of re-emphasizing this idea about change and about growth. So if I was thinking about on a scale from 0 to 10, how ready is someone to change? Like if I was with a Yanma Pokemon card, that might be a way to say, yeah, I'm ready to at least explore a little bit, or I want to go out into the wild blue yonder. And if you are close to being ready to change, then that means that the gap between you and your goals might not be that difficult to cross. So I mean, it depends on where you are on that change cycle. If you're not ready to change, perhaps you're ready to explore your options for change, and that might encourage you because you're like, oh, I thought it was this is a good time to explore your assumptions about what this future could look like. You might assume that it's really hard, and it may not be as hard as you think once you do a little bit of research out there. Okay, so you've identified how close you are to being ready to change. So, what are some options? And we once have our fairy energy Pokemon card. It is a pink card with a glowing pink sphere and a tulips and like a star or synapse or flower bud, whatever again you interpret it at. So if you're trying to build more resilience, it could be flexibility because steel is also very flexible with these options. It might be that, I need to do some work on myself. Um, Before I can even set goals, my goal might be I need to heal some of the my limiting beliefs, or I need to address some of the challenging things that have happened to me in the past in order to move forward. So this is where you can explore your options. It might be, I like this coach that I'm working with. You might have an employee assistance program. You may want to explore therapy. You may need to go back to school. Like there's a lot of different ways to heal. It's healing that gap between yourself and your goals. And finally, what's a way forward? How can we take that first step? And wow, we get the steel card again. One has a comet flare. And so for me, this is resolve to change, commit to change. When you make a firm commitment, now you have yourself that you can hold yourself accountable, or this could be getting an accountability buddy. But I kind of like that we started from one thing and we're ending up it's the same thing, but it's slightly different because this one kind of has the swoosh. This one's shinier. This one's actually the card itself is smoothed out. It's more focused. It's almost like the first card, you're forging the steel, you're kind of, beating by hand. And the second card is at the end of this process, you have a smoother, more cohesive you or function or idea. So that's pretty cool. All right. Day 17, we have some LinkedIn comments. So let's see. It's blooming. It's going well. Daffy Taffy. I don't know why. So for those of you on LinkedIn, I don't know why I don't see comments in here. Oh, there it goes. It showed up. Woohoo. Awesome. Thank you. Asmar, great to hear from you. How is it day 17? Time is flying, my friend, when we're having fun. Thanks so much for joining. We just finished up a Tigro session, and funny enough, we got from steel to steel, and I was identifying that the end product is more polished. Also, you may have missed my exciting announcement that I literally found a Pokédex. Look at these pictures. This one is, I don't remember the name of this one because it's a new one. So I'll show you the original one. Our card for the day was Eevee, which is, and the Eevee showed up again, which is it's a little dog fox and it's going off an adventure. And what's cool about the Eevee is it's full of possibilities. And yeah, day 17, I challenged myself to do a live a day for all of February. Thank God I picked a slow month because this is brutal. I mean, one thing I've learned is I would not do this again. This is really to be consistent on something every day, this intense. But it's been a really awesome journey. And again, please feel free to put your comments, your questions in the comments. It's lovely to see you. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend so far. As you've heard, we're seeing some traction with the university trying to divest themselves against the genocide. So for my fellow revolutionaries out there, keep fighting, keep up the pressure. I'm going to be also sharing my little contribution that has been quasi crowdsourced as far as to keep up the pressure with our leaders. Yeah. No problem. Your connection is horrid as you're on a train. How can we sharpen our discernment capabilities? That's a great question. How can we sharpen our discernment capabilities? So we're going to explore like what could be happening with this discernment, and part of it might be wiring yourself. So the first one that we get is fighting. This is a orange Pokemon card with a fist in there, a black fist. And what is our resistance to our discernment capabilities? And sometimes it's understanding that resistance. We have correctly discerned in the past, try and remember back to that time and think about, what did that feel like for you? Was it a sense that, yep, this is the way to go? And was it in fact the way to go? Did you notice any resistance? I'm going to take the fighting Pokemon card this time in the sense of resistance. Like, did you maybe feel something queasy in your stomach, or did your head hurt, or did you notice your fist clenching? Like, where have you noticed? And maybe if not, you can start by paying attention in your body if you're having resistance to something, because that's a key way to notice that something's not right about this. And I think that's more, if I'm understanding your question correctly, we're trying to sharpen our discernment to correctly and quickly identify threats, by things that are really not going to serve us and help us. So the first thing we can do is just in our day to day, what's happening right now? Are you noticing these areas of resistance? And if you're not, that can be a way to sharpen your discernment capabilities. Paying attention to how it's embodied, more than just the mental, what do you feel in your heart and your guts? I'm big on the head, heart, and guts right now, because I'm definitely one that intellectualizes everything. And I think it, but I don't understand it. And sometimes it takes me a few months to understand it. I went through a very amazing course with Asmar Kazmi. I forget the name of it. If you want to put it in the chat, um, it's to help you stop faffing around. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the program, Asmar. I'm sorry, but it's a wonderful program if you are trying to fluff around, to stop fluffing around. Also, what is real versus an enticing illusion? Yeah, and the opportunities. Exactly. So your discernment is, you're trying to not just see what's a threat, but sometimes our walls are down because we're so busy fighting that we're fighting against what could be good to us. Again, I think it's the same situation, is to look at a time you thought something wasn't good. Kill the kerfuffle challenge. Yeah, that's one in your other program. So go through that if if you want some more help on what you're trying to get real about. Fantastic program. But back to your question. We want to see what are you fighting for, and also what stings. So I think it's getting a clear understanding of how you discern things. Like, we say we want to build this muscle, but if you don't know what the muscle looks like, it's hard to develop it. So I would go back to being a scientist and observing what are things that line up for you and what are things that don't. And when you've had resistance to something, how does that show up? Is it in your body? Is it just some weird sensation? What does that look like for you? And once you start to identify it, then you can start to develop that. You can see when something was off, X happened, and here was the outcome. Or when something was a really good opportunity, I said no, and here was the outcome. And that's happened to me. I've looked at like some of your anti-capitalism challenge, and at the time I was like, I don't have time for this. And yet, what did I do? I signed up anyway. So and that one I kind of overrode my initial thing of, yes, I want to do this. I don't think it's an illusion, but I said no. And what did I do? I ended up saying this anyway. So I think a way to help is to explore those areas of resistance in your life. And so then what's the challenge with that? And we have the Grass Energy Pokemon card. This is a glowing green sphere with a black leaf, and it's grass. So, grass energy for me are things that keep us grounded. And we had this combination yesterday as well. And I get just the idea of trampling over the grass versus kind of walking gently. I don't know, being intentional with our step. And so it is a challenge because this is kind of something organic, and your heart gets involved as well. I associate green with like the heart. And when do we listen to our heart? When do we listen to our mind? When do we listen to our guts? And how do we bring them all into alignment? And I think when we're talking about discernment, we're talking about a space or a state that you feel grounded, a space or a state that you feel you can grow. So when we're looking at opportunities and you're looking at it through all these lenses, is it something that help us grow? And take it to the nth degree, because there's definitely some things that sound good in the short term, but it's bollocks in the long term, to use one of your lovely tackles, your lovely terminologies. I'm trying to think of an example of what's real versus enticing illusion. So, for example, there was a very good critique on celebrity. And once upon a time, I too wanted to be a princess and have a castle and all these things. But when I look at us in a holistic point of view, so this is when you're like, what's real versus an illusion? It's looking at upstream and downstream. What does it take to become a princess? What's involved in that? Yeah, what's involved in that? Oh, this is a great point. I'm going to highlight your answer. Yeah, adopt the scientist method. So, once upon a time, be a princess. And then I thought about, well, how hard are these people working? And why do they need to work for me? I don't want to be a princess that's exploiting, my loyal subjects, whatever. And so I've just kind of crushed that idea of becoming a princess. Sarah June, she's on LinkedIn too, under Sarah June. She's posited a question about food, because it doesn't get any more real than our sustenance. And when we're thinking about discerning, where does our food come from? Who's involved in making that? I think when we're doing the scientific model, it's kind of like who, why, how often. We're using problem definitions. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And that just sends you down a rabbit hole. So I'm even to the point where, should I even go out to eat at a restaurant? Because who's paying the wages of these people? How much does food cost? Why does it cost that? What's the environmental impact? Yeah. Okay, I will tap into that. I'll tap into your next question. Okay. Continuing on. So our challenge is to keep it organic. And I think when we look at discernment as looking at it as an ecosystem, the answers and these things don't happen in a vacuum. So if you have an initial thought that, yes, this is amazing, and it does take a skill to develop, but as you continue on practicing this muscle, you can grow and develop that skill. Think about what's happening upstream and downstream from your choice, and that might help you out. So what might what might help us in discerning? I love this Camerupt. It's a fire Pokemon card, and Camerupt is a camel, and camels will spit in your eye. So I think about continuously challenging yourself and our complacency and our belief systems. I, I'm trying to think of a new term, because I think this idea that there are no sacred cows is problematic. So I'm trying to think of a new term, but there is nothing that should be devoid of examination and scrutiny. I think that's a better way to put it, until I can think of something. But there are no beautiful, precious ideas that we can't explore, because we're changing, our world is changing, and what science is changing. Once upon a time, we thought the sun revolved around us, and we learned that we revolve around the sun, And there's billions and billions of galaxies out there. We're not even the most important one. When you look at what Earth is in the scheme of the universe, it's a pixel that you can't even discern on this screen. So be the camera and kind of don't hold anything as as sacred. Like, you have to challenge your own thoughts. Yeah, that too, discernment as an ecosystem. We have to think about what's happening upstream and downstream. And so be a skeptic about these things. Continuously challenge your ideas, even the ones that have worked well. We're in a whole new world now. Everything is changing. Yeah, there's some fundamentals like even decency and human rights that should never be changed or up for option. But as a collective, the more we learn about this world, the more we learn about our footprint, the more we learn about the systems at play and the long term impacts, then we need to be continuously skeptical about decisions. And that would also build your discernment muscle. And the last one is the Psychic Energy Pokemon card. It's a purple card with a black eye, and it has a purple glowing sphere. And I think, I mean, this is what we're trying to get to with building our discernment skills. But what I think about when I think of purple is this idea of a higher self. So if we're building discernment and we want better discernment, it is like, again, going back to discernment as an ecosystem, because our choices and decisions have impacts upstream and downstream. And it's also not allowing the perfect to get in the way of the good. And I want to boycott and divest from everything, but at some point, I do have to purchase certain foods or certain things because the system has limited some of my choices. So push back where we can, like going back to this food idea, even something as simple as peanut butter. That's pretty easy to make. Again, if you have access to electricity and a food processor and some time, it's easy for me. I do have a food processor. I can just buy nuts and build that. But maybe if you're somebody that you literally have to use a mortar and pestle, perhaps that's not an option for you. And I can't hold someone to the standards as myself because I don't know what they're going through, right? If you are somebody that has trouble chopping up vegetables due to just how your hands are built or the strength level that you have, then you might have to purchase pre-chopped vegetables in order to survive. So look at the whole thing and what is going to help you help others, but not where you set yourself on fire to keep everybody else warm. So that's the ecosystem of there. That's a quick answer to that first question. Great question, Ismar. Thank you. Second question, how can we tap into revolutionary rest? I've recently realized I can do better to rest properly, sans consumption of things and services, etc. This is my own challenge as Mara myself. And I guess for me, before I even pull a card, it comes to thinking about rest and understanding what rest is for you, right? And I think you've kind of have defined the problem, that rest is not just going to sleep. It is really renewing and recharging. And yeah, I'm definitely guilty of resting, really just doom scrolling on Instagram or LinkedIn, or I'm still engaged with services and my mind is really not getting the chance to talk to me. I mean, the other night I got like the Pokemon stretcher. It's like, shut up and go to bed. And so I ended my live like 30 minutes into it because I was exhausted. So let's think about rest. And again, we get the Fighting Energy Pokemon card. And this is the orange card with the fist. I immediately think about rest as resistance. I actually got Trisha Hershey's book and haven't read it because, wow, me and reading, but we'll get to that. But thinking about rest, it is a form of resistance, right? And so what are we resisting against? And that might help you define the scope of your rest. If you are resisting capitalist exploitive tendencies, then what makes that up. And absolutely, the little pocket phones in our hands and all of these external situations are things that interrupt our rest. And you brought up the word revolutionary. So, revolution to me can mean two things. One is to rebel or resist against the status quo and disrupt it. But revolutions are also going around in circles, right? It's maybe breaking cycles. So when we think of a revolution, I'm thinking of like a record and I'm motioning my hands spinning around. But it's revolutions per minute. That's like the speed of a record. So what are we about with rest? Are we tapping into a different frequency of this revolution? Are we trying to scratch the needle and stop the record from playing? So those are two different ways to think about revolutionary rest. Are we building a different habit? Are we building a different groove when we're tapping in kind of rest? So what are some of the challenges with that? And we have the water energy Pokemon card. And water to me is the epitome of rest. It's a calming color to me, but maybe to somebody else it's not. So this is a blue card with a blue water droplet. And I think it's about starting. How can we tap into revolutionary rest? So thinking about what is the resistance to rest, and some of that are ingrained ideas about productivity. I've had little children ask me about productivity. I'm like, why do we need to be this productive? And that, I think, is a lie swilled to us by the systems to keep us exhausted. So it's starting in with tiny steps and maybe envisioning, what does rest look like for you? And that is a challenge, because I also look at water as something that can overwhelm you, that can drown. We have so many choices. And even in what we consider rest, should I meditate? Should I stay without my phone? Should I do yoga? I mean, those are things that are active. Should I walk? Like, what is the quality of the rest that you're looking to accomplish? And I think it goes back to defining what rest is, because if we're not defining what we're doing, then we're not, that gets us confused. So I think you have put in part of the definition here when you have sans consumption of things and services. Yeah, decolonizing our metrics. I love that. I'm gonna highlight that. So yeah, let's decolonize what these metrics are. And there's also a whole, rest industrial complex. I know that term's been thrown around, but I'm seeing it. The meditation industry is huge, and anybody is a yoga now. I mean, or a guru, and we don't need that kind of energy out there as well. So it's tapping into what is restorative. When I think of water, I also think of something that is restorative, and productivity is not restorative. So what are we resisting? What are we defining as rest? What are our metrics? Because you have to see, what do you consider yourself to be successful at resting? I know that seems like counterintuitive, but I think defining what you're thinking of rest will help to make a difference. And we start small. We start up. It might be, I'm going to go without my phone for a minute. Then you build up to 5 minutes. I mean, from what I'm seeing in your definition, it's sans consumption of things. How can I create a restful environment? Because we don't always have access to green fields and idyllic pastures. So what does rest look like in different circumstances? How do we build in rest in our day? I mean, you're a little bit different because you run your own business, but even then, sometimes it's really hard to walk away from something. So it's defining rest and having options for that rest, because you have limited time, resources, and circumstances. And if you only define it as rest is when I sit in a field without my phone, it can rain. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't have even a perfect idea of rest, but I think a strong underlying definition. And from what I've seen on yours, it is not consuming. So, what is an environment that you're not consuming things? And what does success look like for you? And so, what can help us in that situation? And we get a trainer card, and it literally is Revive. It's so spooky how these things are on par. So, it's these little, I don't even know what these are. These little kind of starry meteorites and so, like, think about what are things that revive you, what are things that are restful for you, and that could be trial and error. Perhaps sitting still is difficult for certain people, like, and that's what is defined as rest, but that might not be restful for you. Rest might be going on a long walk because that's what unplugs your mind from things, and it is noticing things on the walk. Um, Walking mindfully, for example, versus walking to get your steps in, two different processes. It could be swimming, it could be sitting still, but it's starting with paying attention to the things that revive you and are restorative. And then you have a better definition of what you're considering as rest. And yeah, it's definitely not the colonizer's metrics. It's your own metrics. It's things that by observing yourself as a human being in this ecosystem, then you're getting a better idea of rest and how to make it happen under any circumstance or situation. Honestly, for me, rest sometimes is just taking a moment to breathe. It helps to let your brain like go, what am I doing? Like what is even happening here? And so finally, what is a way forward with rest? And we have Corsola. This is a water energy Pokemon. It looks like a bit of coral under the water on the floor. And this one is it looks like it's walking along, but I don't actually see legs. And this one has a call for family. Rest might be part of engaging in a community of like minded people who are also committed to rest as a form of resistance, because we started out with resistance. It's pursued Marini for the branches on its head. This Pokemon will sometimes snap its own branches off as a diversion while it escapes. What are some things that we're willing to sacrifice for rest? It might be that phone. It might be certain people in our lives that are not giving us rest. We are resisting against something, and it definitely can mean sacrifice. When I started, and I need to get back on it, so there's that accountability. When I started trying to resist with rest, I gave myself a goal of 30 minutes. And most of the first 10 minutes of the 30 minutes was thinking of all the things I should be doing or I could be doing while I'm resting. And it was really challenging. I think I've found a more successful form for me, but even that can be challenging sometimes with pages. It is just a time to reflect, but I still use my phone sometimes because I pull up this deck I like. It's online. So it's defining what is successful. And even then I can see other things in, like I'm trying to build structure to my rest. And with morning pages, I think that kind of defeats the purpose because it's supposed to be kind of free form. But even then, there's a whole industry of people with here's the best morning pages prompts. So it's divesting yourself from the things that don't agree with you. It's training to take baby steps and being willing to divest of certain things. And that is revolutionary because only you can define what is successful for you. And sometimes it might be stepping away from people. People have their own ideas about situations. And that's why I like to call myself a coach, but more of a facilitator, because I'm not living your life. I don't know what rest means to you. I know what it means to me. And it's still a work in definition and process. So explore the areas of resistance. If you're struggling to rest, are we resistant to it? is it because of how the colonizers have defined rest and put negative aspects of being still? And part of that could be, if we're still, we can realize what is happening. I remember in one of my morning pages, I thought I had this profound idea, and it was like, the message isn't for the messenger. And like, that didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. But what I meant to say was, sometimes the message isn't for the receiver, but people will view how the message is delivered, which is like the message I'm giving up um, to my lead of these baby dolls. So it's not conflating rest with unabashed selfishness. Yeah. Okay, so you're getting the idea of that community service as well. And I think it's a give and take, because even in a community, sometimes we still need space to process our interactions with said community. But yeah, why are we resting? Is it for a glow up, or is it that we can get back to building the world that we want to see? A world where rest is part of it. I mean, because when you're working, for example, if you're out in, I'll just say gardening, right? Because some people find gardening to be restful, but gardening is also something that you're interacting with an environment. Why are you planting a garden? There's community gardens. Can you work together in things? They're absolutely community meditations, or I think Trisha Hersey has community naps. I'm actually not sure. I learn more once I finally start reading that book. But yeah, it is about being ready to come back for the world that we're fighting to build. So I think that's a beautiful idea. It's not about just, like I said, rest is not a day. Rest can be paying your bills. I mean, that's not very restful, but sometimes rest is doing the things to give you the peace of mind to continue on. But yeah, if we're revolutionary resting, because we're trying to build a different world, we're trying to build a different community, but we're also trying to do this without setting ourselves on fire to keep everybody else warm. A really powerful question, Asmara. I appreciate it. Um, it sounds like you have come up with some ideas of rest to start with. And when you tie it into your original question about discernment and sharpening that muscle, I think that goes hand in hand with rest, because if you're rested, then you can be present. Are you a gardener? No, I'm not a gardener. I I love this quote. Are you gardeners? I hate gardeners. Has a power complex about flowers. I honestly kind of feel that way to some degree. My lawn, I prefer to just let grow there what wants to grow there, because that's what's best suited to the environment. I don't think they're weeds. It's just what humans have defined that way. Unfortunately, I do think we might have to consider being dictators of the earth and survive, because these monolithic food industrial complexes, they grow these power crops, and they're so homogenous that we're lacking the diversity in our food, which makes it more susceptible to blight and the fungal infections and a total collapse of that. So I'm with you about gardeners, but definitely being in the earth. I definitely like being in the earth. So it could be tending to things. And again, what are weeds? Like, yeah, when you go out in nature, that to me is an example of rest to some extent. However, even in nature, you have blight, you have fungus, you have bacteria, you have invasive species. So part of that might be putting into balance what we have wrought. Even the idea of trade not only brings in new food or new animals or new, but it brings in things we didn't consider, these microbial ecosystems. Again, it goes back to the ecosystem that was not part of this environment before. And sometimes we bring unintended harm with it. But that is a fabulous quote. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for joining and making this special. And I'm going to resistfully rest this weekend as well, to be ready to continue on with our brothers and sisters in solidarity. So thank you for joining. Tomorrow's live will be 7 o'clock as well. For those of you that can join, I've been Stacy Casson. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day.